I'm going to walk you through how to detox your home. So we're working on detoxing our system, but we want to work on detoxing our home, our environment, because where you spend most of your time, that could also be a large contributor of exposures. So let's get into it. From today's presentation, I hope that you all are able to learn effective strategies for reducing your toxic exposure in your home from food, packaging, storage, cookware, air care products. There's so much I can talk about, but I chose to just talk about the high level things. Okay. The ones that most people that can be, a source of toxins in our homes. Most people use a lot of plastic. So plastic is everywhere. Our food packaging, storage containers, the eating utensils. We're exposed to plastic. It's ubiquitous, and plastic is a cocktail of different phthalates, BPA, methyl mercury, DDT, styrenes, BCBs. The list goes on. There's a lot that we're exposed to. And this is interesting. The University of Notre Dame found that food packaging is high in levels of PFAS. And PFAS are a class of, there's over 12,000 different chemicals in this class, and they have known effects, impacts on health, negative impacts. And they're known as forever chemicals. They're forever chemicals because they don't break down. And that's what makes them dangerous. They actually can concentrate in the liver and the kidneys and create problems. This is data from the CDC, from their biomonitoring studies. The CDC conducts biomonitoring studies to get an idea of how much chemicals or different things that the public is exposed to. And what they found was that PFAS chemicals could be detected in blood of 98% of the US population. So these chemicals are ubiquitous, like BPA. Some people can have high amounts of these in their blood, and you can actually see it and somewhat correlate it with their condition, their health condition. So what you see here, let me minimize this. This is the PFAS structure. So PFAS is a mnemonic for perfluorals. This molecule, PFAS chemicals, have a lot of fluoride atoms. Okay, so you could see all of fluorine. And when we get exposed to it, either from food packaging, as the study from the University of Notre Dame found, we have it in cookware and contaminated food. The food is contaminated because the packaging is what carries it. Once it's in the system, it can impact our lipid chemistry, of impacting our cholesterol. And because it is a hormone endocrine disrupting chemical, it can lead to obesity and lead to weight gain. It affects our metabolism and how we metabolize lipids and glucose. And so that can increase the risk for metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes. As I mentioned, it stores in the liver, so it can be a hepatic toxin or hepatic toxic to the liver cells and promote liver conditions. Preeclampsia. So here's the thing, PFAS chemicals, again, because of the endocrine disrupting effects that it has just virtually every endocrine system in a body, it can lead to infertility. It's been shown to be quite elevated in women with PCOS. Because it's a hormone disruptor, it affects steroid sex hormones, which means that it will affect reproductive health and cause fertility or lead to low birth weight in a fetus or a baby that's born, and miscarriage and preeclampsia. The list goes on. Neurodegeneration, because of the impact it creates in the nervous system, it causes low-grade neural inflammation. It also disrupts the immune system and T cell differentiation, lower antibody production. When you disrupt the immune system, if it causes some kind of change or alterations to how your immune system works, that can increase the risk for cancer because your immune system is your military for getting rid of abnormal cells that are growing. So, lower immunity, increased risk for cancer, and organ toxicity, as kind of what I talked about with the liver. This is why we don't want PFAS in our food packaging, our storage containers, because of the multi-system effect that it has on our body. This is the thyroid. So the thyroid is an endocrine structure as well. And when we're exposed to PFAS and it's in the blood, again, I mentioned immune dysregulation. So it can affect our thyroid antibodies, can elevate them. It can also, which impacts the thyroid. It can cause abnormal thyroid function. Something else, the reason why I showed the fluoride structure of what a PFAS chemical looks like is because the thyroid is a tissue that uptakes iodine. Iodine is really important for the synthesis of T4, T3 hormone. And when we don't have adequate iodine, that can disrupt the T4, T3 production. PFAS chemicals can disrupt thyroid function because the fluoride, and it's this phenomena called, it's an antagonism, fluoride, thyroid, iodine antagonism. So the fluoride atom is a lower atomic weight than iodine. So it displaces iodine in a thyroid and it causes obviously thyroid dysfunction. So one of the important things when we consider thyroid health and hyper or hypothyroidism, we should really get an assessment of a patient's environmental exposures to PFAS chemicals because the fluoride can displace iodine and affect how the thyroid works. And of course, there's some downstream consequences to a thyroid that's not working properly. It affects the brain. And so this is too something I also want to mention is an example of functional medicine because we look at systems biology is what we do. If there's something wrong with a system, we need to look at how the individual systems are interacting with one another and how the environment, how our bodies are interacting with the environment. And so you could see PFAS exposure is causing immune dysregulation, which affects thyroid function. But there's also that direct interaction of PFAS chemicals and displacing iodine in a thyroid and affecting thyroid production, hormone production. And then there's downstream effects of that on the brain. Everything is all interconnected, and we have to think like that whenever there's anything going on. So this is what happens when you're not carefully and properly using plastic. So when you're putting your plastic in a dishwasher or using hot water, that can damage the plastic. Plastic breaks down. Never do that. It's not good. You putting acidic foods, citrus foods, tomatoes, anything like that in plastic, it can actually accelerate the breakdown of plastic. Microwave, when you place plastic in a microwave, it breaks down. Okay. And if you're using scrub brushes that are harsh, that's going to help, that's going to create scratches on the plastic and it's going to create opportunity for things to come off the plastic. Okay. So you have to take proper care in how you use plastic or just avoid it. Okay, so this was looking at microplastics. Scientists were looking at microplastics coming from food containers. And this is an animal study. but we use animal models to get an idea of what can happen in humans. So eventually, and I think we even already have some animal study or human studies on the effects of microplastics in humans. Food containers, what they found was food containers exposed to high temperatures released more than 10 million microplastics per milliliter in water. Microplastics are the other reasons why you would avoid plastic cookware or storage containers. The microplastics are these tiny plastic particles that you can inhale, you can get them through your food source, and they have deleterious effects on health from an oxidative stress perspective. More oxidative stress promotes tissue damage, neurotoxins promotes neurotoxicity, reproductive toxicity. These are they're known to facilitate cancer development and alter metabolism. So microplastics are really bad. Now, what do they look like? Oh, let me at least say this. So when you're trying to reduce your plastic exposure, this is what you want to swap to. So here you have plastic on the left, you want to swap to glass. And you can use glass mason jars or storage containers, glass WEC, or stainless steel stainless steel or glass water bottles. Okay. So this is plastic cooking utensils. You want to replace those cooking utensils with wood or stainless steel, bamboo. So these are some alternatives to plastic cooking utensils. Raman Imaging is a company that did a test on the number of particles that come from a scratch of Teflon. So Teflon is nonstick material that contains PFAS chemicals as well. And what they found was that there were 9,000 plastic particles released from one scratch of Teflon, and as many as 2.3 million tiny particles during meal prep within 30 seconds. So there's a lot of plastic particles coming off the Teflon. And air fryers, non-stick air fryers, are made from Teflon. So when you're using the air fryer or anything non-stick, it will release these plastic particles that we don't want, and PFAS chemicals we don't want. If you're um, interested in using an air fryer, you do use it, but not very often. I mean, just one use is quite damaging if it's a non-stick one. So they have a glass air fryer. I did create in the membership a document of other types of air fryers that are not glass, but they're not as toxic. Yeah, I have that, and that should be available. Okay. So reducing chemical exposure when you're using an air fryer, try to avoid nonstick coating or plastic if you can. I apologize for the formatting here. Look for shiny gray interior. That's a rule of thumb. If you're not sure what Teflon looks like, it normally has this shiny gray black appearance. And that's, if you're looking for any cookware that looks like, that's something you want to avoid because it has PFAS chemicals and it's not going to be healthy to use. Look for stainless steel or ceramic or glass if you can. And this is another nuance to using air fryers or just cooking in your home. Use proper ventilation and use the air fryer over stovetop and use the stove fan. You have to use the stove fan. It's there for a reason. And this is something else. When you're cooking in your home, use a HEPA filter. It's important because your indoor air quality is actually more toxic than outdoor. Okay. So HEPA filter every time you're using an air fryer, every time you're cooking, because you're inhaling all of those chemicals. And if people are frying, you're in oil, you're also getting more chemicals. Or if you're burning stuff, more chemicals. If you absolutely have to use plastic, avoid heating in plastic. Use plastic only for storing cold items, and get in the habit of looking at the resin or looking for the resin identification code. So every plastic that you use has a code at the bottom. It's a tiny triangle at the bottom, and that number indicates what the plastic is made of. And in general, even if you don't know what the number designation is, at least remember that numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5 are BPA free. Okay, that's just something to note. And if you ever in a situation where you're in a pinch, you have to use some plastic, and you just, sometimes you can't avoid it, like the 5 gallon water containers, they're actually made from either 1, 2, 3, or 4. Some are not. Just get in the habit of reading, looking at your plastic, and identifying a resin identification code. How many of you use plastic cutting boards? So the University of North Dakota found when you're cutting on plastic, and they actually used carrots in this study, but the fascinating part of this is when they cut on a plastic chopping board, they found there was 15 milligrams of microplastics per cut, or about 50 grams per year, which is the equivalent, if you want to put it in perspective, 10 plastic credit cards. 10 plastic credit cards of, and that's per cut. That's really alarming. This here, the cutting board, if you look to the right, you see the plastic. Those are microplastics, and that is what goes in your food. So when you use a plastic cutting board, for every cut, I mean, just imagine how much you're slicing on it, right? For every cut, you're creating these tiny, minute plastic particles that are in your food, and a lot of times you can't see them because they're so small, and the food is actually covering the microplastics, so you can't see it. That's a problem. What you want to do is swap out your plastic cutting boards for wood. There's 2 benefits to that. Of course, you're not getting the exposure to the microplastics, but you're also, wood is antibacterial, so bacteria does not survive on wooden surfaces because the way the wood behaves, it traps the bacteria and they die. For that reason, for a hygiene reason, that's why you would use wood. How many of you consume brown rice? Do you consume brown rice? A, no, I don't like it. B, yes, I prefer brown rice over white rice. And C, sometimes. What's your answers? Consumer Reports found that brown rice has 80% more inorganic arsenic on average than white rice. And the reason being because the arsenic accumulates in the grain's outer layers, which is removed from white rice, which is why brown rice is more healthier than white rice. But there's some negatives to that as well because of the arsenic. And so what you want to do when you're sourcing rice is the brown basmati rice from California, India, Pakistan is the best choice. And they tested the rice, and there's not these rice, even though there is arsenic, they have a lower concentration of arsenic. And I also want to make mention that if your rice does not come from here in the US and your rice does not come from California or India, Pakistan, or if it comes from places like Missouri or Texas or Louisiana, these places, or Michigan, they have tested high for arsenic compared to California. Okay. Now, other grains have arsenic, but quinoa, buckwheat, and millet have lower amounts of arsenic. So when you're looking for healthy rice or good rice that's low in arsenic, you want to source from the places I indicated. You also want to wash until you can wash until it's clear to reduce the arsenic levels. When you're washing it, you're rinsing it and it's kind of foamy looking. Keep cleaning it until it's clear. That reduces arsenic by 30%. You also use what is called the pasta method, which reduces it 60%. And what that is you're increasing, like you would cook pasta, you have a higher ratio of water to a smaller ratio of rice. So 6 to 10 cups water, 1 cup rice, and you discard the excess. You're not going to cook that. So the traditional way that people cook rice or conventional way is to cook the water, cook the rice until the water is gone. But no, with this method, you're actually cooking the rice and you test it and see if it's soft, and then you drain it. And that's actually what's used in places like India and Pakistan. That's how they cook their rice. Whether I don't know if they're knowing that that's actually reducing arsenic levels when they cook like that, but it happens. That's a protective way of reducing your arsenic levels. So what this slide is just, there's some other stuff regarding the kitchen that we can really, behavioral things, lifestyle practices that we can consider when we're trying to reduce our toxin exposure in the kitchen. You want to avoid canned products due to BPA exposure. They line cans with BPA. I can go, that's a whole nother, this, like I said, can be, there's a lot of content and stuff to talk about, but I really don't have enough time. So I had to just condense it here. But BPA is, the companies, manufacturers line cans with BPA to prevent corrosion. And obviously BPA and an impact on health and the endocrine system. We don't want BPA. We want to expose reduce our exposure to bisphenols. Tetra Paks is material that's primarily paper. So you'll see some foods packaged in that kind of material. And then if you're looking for BPA-free cans, Eden Foods is a company, and there's starting to be other companies that are somewhat going in this direction with creating BPA-free product or storage containers or cans. So Eden Foods is one company, and I'm sure there's more that you can find. But I know that this company is extremely transparent, and we'll talk about that too. But you want to be able, if you're not sure about something, you need to be able to call the company and ask them questions, and need to be transparent. And some companies are not transparent. Eden Foods is create BPA-free cans. Okay. And I can't speak to bisphenols because remember I said there's a class of bisphenols and BPA is just one of them. There's many others, BPS and BPB, there's a whole lot of them. And so I think Eden Foods is one that has absolutely no bisphenols, but the other companies, I don't know, but they do have BPA free. You have to look for them. Avoid microwave popcorn. How many eat microwave popcorn? So from the saturated fat part, obviously you don't eat it for that reason, but the paper that's used, so there's two chemicals that are in microwavable popcorn. So there's diacetyl, which is what makes it buttery. And then there's the PFAS chemicals on the lining. If you look at the plastic or you look at the inside of the popcorn bag, you can see this resin-like material on the interior of the, and that's PFAS. That's the PFAS chemical that I was telling you that you need to avoid. So you don't consume microwave popcorn. Avoid glazed and unglazed clay cookware. There's I can present a case on that. That's a whole nother thing, but basically lead is the concern there. And store condiments in glass if possible. If you like condiments, try to get them in glass. But remember, genetics loads a gun, environment pulls a trigger, lifestyle pulls a trigger. You do the best you can, and you're not going to be able to totally eliminate everything, but things that you have control over, you do that. Avoid scratching, scrubbing plastic appliances when you're or putting hot or acidic foods in them. So you know how you're using your blender or you're using a food processor. Try to avoid scratching and scrubbing, okay? Try to avoid using hot water. Don't put them in a dishwasher, nothing like that. Try to not to use hot water when you're cleaning these plastic containers, okay? And you can consider a stainless steel immersion blender for hot soups and beverages. So this was a small study that looked at the impact of just going 3 days without plastic or cans. And they were measuring urinary metabolites of BPA and phthalates. And what they found was that just 3 days of avoiding this, BPA concentrations dropped by 66%, and phthalate metabolite, the DEHP metabolite of phthalate chemical, dropped by between 53 and 56%. So this is amazing. Just making better choices of what you're using can really dramatically drop these concentrations of reduce your exposure. Being more conscious about what you're using in your home. So going to the living room, do you currently use scented wall fragrance or candles? I remember one of the things I have such it's a pet peeve of mine. I go to an Airbnb and there's just so much fragrance. I don't like it. It's way too many chemicals, and it's so bad because the chemicals are mainly, I'm going to talk about them, but they have benzene. Benzene is a heavy molecule, and when you leave out the house and you get in your car and you can still smell the fragrance, almost as if you sprayed yourself with perfume and you just walked into a place. Okay. That is bad. It shouldn't be like that. Okay. Okay. So the University of Massachusetts, they say here that air fresheners can impact indoor air quality by adding to potentially hazardous pollutants to the air. And the use of air fresheners is associated with elevated levels of volatile organic compounds, VOCs. And the VOCs are formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, benzene, toluene, list goes on. And there's there's so many of these chemicals, 100 different types of VOCs. And I recall when I was in medical school, I had colleagues who, when we're conducting autopsies, we didn't conduct autopsies in medical school, but the cadavers. So we had to be in a cadaver lab working for gross anatomy. And my colleagues could not handle the formaldehyde. It was so bad. They were breaking out in rashes and having respiratory symptoms, just all kinds of skin issues. It was a horrible thing. So it's a big problem when you're exposed to that. And some people are more sensitive than others. So this is what the different types of VOCs that are released from air fresheners, but there are other sources too. So benzene's been connected to the neurological system, respiratory system, impacting these various systems, reproductive, leukemia, so hematological, blood cancers, toluene, respiratory, kidney, liver. I mean, these chemicals are impacting various organ systems, and VOCs are up to 10 times higher indoors. Okay. That's really bad because you're exposed to this every day. So the Consumer Product Safety Commission says a candle, moving on from air fresheners, a candle with lead core wick releases 5 times the amount of lead considered hazardous for children and exceeds EPA pollution standards for outdoor air. So your candles, so you have air fresheners that are releasing VOCs, and you have candles that are releasing lead. So incense, this was looking at incense smoke and the impact on airway disease. And what they found was that on average, incense burning produces particulates greater than 45 milligrams per gram burned as compared to 10 milligrams per gram burned for cigarettes. And what that basically is 4.5 times more particulates are created using an incense compared to a cigarette. That's really bad. So you don't want to use incense. You don't want to use certain types of candles. And I'll give you, what kinds of candles. If you like candles, what you should do. And then no air fresheners, folks, because of the VOCs, all of these chemicals you're exposed to, benzenes, toluenes, etc., formaldehyde. So this is interesting. Incense, this was a study looking at incense and the impact on cardiovascular mortality in Chinese people. And what they found was long-term exposure to incense burning in the home environment was associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular mortality. And the reason why is because the chemicals that are inside incense reduce endothelial nitric oxide production, which is never a good thing for cardiovascular health. It also affects metabolic health, affecting lipids, decreasing cardioprotective HDL, and elevating LDL cholesterol. And so this is why it increases the risk for cardiovascular mortality. And there's some other mechanisms that have been studied in humans of the effects of the chemicals that are found in incense on cardiovascular function. This is showing just the various systems that are affected when a person uses incense. And it's not just cardiovascular. That was just one study. Like I said, I can't give you everything because it's just too much, but it does affect the respiratory system. This is why we're seeing increased incidence of lung cancer in non-smokers. Okay. We're also seeing increase in dialysis centers around the country because of these chemicals that people are being exposed to. And incense have many chemicals and they have known renal toxicity. What do you want to do? Air fresheners, synthetic air fresheners or candles, you want to consider, natural essential oils. And these are examples. There's ceramic essential oil diffuser. This is a natural candle. And I'm going to go into a little bit of what the candles if people are interested. So when you're using a candle, you want to trim the wick 1/4 inch to 1/8 before use, and that helps it burn evenly and it reduces how much of the soot that is created. You want to avoid phthalate or petroleum-based candles. If you are a person who likes candles, because candles are nice, you want to make sure that it's phthalate or petroleum-based. Absent. It doesn't have any of that. Avoid burning a candle for longer than 3 hours or longer than the recommended time. When you get a candle, normally the manufacturer will tell you how long to use it for. And this is so that you can reduce the amount of soot and indoor pollution. Look for candles that are 100% natural waxes. So coconut, soy, or beeswax is what you want to look for. And fragrance, you want 100% essential oils. You want to make sure, if you're not sure, just, contact a company and ask them what the fragrance is. But it should be 100% essential oils. The wicks, 100% cotton, paper, hemp, or wood. Okay. And that's going to help reduce your exposure to VOCs and any other types of, chemicals that are coming out off the candle. Essential oil diffuser, that's fantastic. If you're trying to create a nice aroma in your home, because we all like nice aromas, use an essential air diffuser. You can also simmer a pot of water with cinnamon, any herbs you like, cinnamon sticks, orange peels, cloves, apple, vanilla. Make your own, create your own aroma, and then make a homemade essential oil air spray. And that can help, give you the scent that you're looking for your home without it being so toxic. Okay, so this is the last slide. I do remember this. So just to reduce your overall exposure to your living room space, adopt a no shoe indoors policy. So they've found all kinds of bacteria that's found in hospitals, on people's shoes. Okay, they're coming home, they're walking in their home, they're tracking bacteria found in hospitals in their home. And also, I think it was a study, it was from the University of Arizona, and I think they found 421,000 units of bacteria at the bottom of a shoe, the sole of a shoe. So you're getting all of that bacteria as you're, coming in to your home. And not to mention the pesticides and insecticides, because you're at the park or you're walking somewhere where they've sprayed. You're tracking all that stuff indoors. So adopt a no shoe indoors policy. And so they have to also practice that and be okay with taking their shoes off. So you want to vacuum and or wet dust often your home. So people dust, they might dust, but that's not really doing anything. That's just displacing the dust particles. That's all that's doing. So you need to use a wet duster that's actually has a little bit of dampness so that it can pick up more, because dry dusting is just spreading it out. That's all it's doing. And the vacuum cleaner, you want to have a HEPA filter with that vacuum cleaner. Your furniture, you can go back and check this, but you want furniture that does not have any flame retardants. And so there you can look underneath your furniture, and there are tags. And if your tag says TB117, that's an absolute no. That means your furniture has flame retardants. And there's just so much in terms of health hazards associated with flame retardants. That's a whole nother conversation. And they made revisions throughout the years. And so you might see a tag that says TB117-2013. This just means that the furniture might have some flame retardants. So maybe there's one part of it that doesn't have it and another part that does. You have to check with the company. But this one, you just be cautious. And then the tag SP1019 is for sure does not have any flame retardants.